Looks like our number is going to be slim this morning. We got a lot of sickness floating around through the congregation, okay, which is not too unusual for this time of year, and colds and flus and all this stuff floating around, and kids in school taking it back and forth. So anyway, it is good to be here this morning and to see everyone out. Jeff, would you open us with a word of prayer, please?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day you've given us, and we thank you for new blessings on it. We thank you for watching over us and being able to be here and study a portion of your word today. We ask, Lord, that you be with those that came with us, and watch over them and help them get well enough to be back with us again for the next point of time. I ask that you be with Bobby as he teaches the class this morning and brings the lesson to us. We ask that you be with those that are teaching, not only here at this congregation, but other congregations this morning. Work be blessed. We ask, Lord, that you'll watch over us, help us use these lessons that we've learned today and to teach others. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Of course, this morning we're still in the book of Numbers. Technically, we'll be in Numbers chapter 10 this morning, studying about the children of Israel as they're getting ready. And God has set up an organization for them to depart from Mount Sinai. And of course, they're going to be headed to the wilderness of Paran, specifically a place that we read a good bit about in the Bible called Kadesh Barnea. Okay, and it seems like they're going to get, as they get there in that area, it looks like that's where they're going to hover for about 38 years, because we're starting to get into some of the action, if you will, that went on amongst the people, the things that they got engaged in, the things that they did that was sin in front of, in the eyes of God, God bringing down punishment. We're going to start seeing that relatively quick. And of course, in the end, God said, well, you're not going to go over into the promised land. So they wandered in the wilderness. It was a total of 40 years after they left Egypt. 38 years, because they've been a year or two here now at Sinai. So anyway, that's what we're going to be looking at. We're also going to start to get into things about the mixed multitude and Israel grumbling because they don't have meat. God is going to provide them with quail. We're also going to get into this part about Moses felt like that he was so overwhelmed and overburdened with the government and taking care of Israel, he felt like that God should just kill him and get him out of his misery. Pretty much it's kind of stated like that in there. So God's going to appoint the 70 elders. We're all going to see where Aaron and Miriam grumble against Moses. And we're going to see some punishment netted out for that. So when I say we're going to get into some of the, maybe not a good term to use, but some of the more action that we know about that's going on. So far, what we've been doing is looking at the organization, of course, of Israel, of the priesthood coming out of the children of Israel and being set up, and all the rules and regulations and things that were set up with the old law. And a lot of times when we think about the old law, we think about the Ten Commandments, but that's just only one small, very minute aspect of it. It's a whole lot to the law of Moses, okay? All the sacrifices and all the regulations and all the do's and all the don'ts and this, and it's just overwhelming when you look at it. And I'm not sure that we today in our time really understand all the ins and outs of it, okay? Because it was so detailed and there was so much to it. So anyway, that's enough of that. We'll move on into Numbers chapter 10. We're going to start Numbers chapter 10 with the blast of the silver trumpets and the journey from Sinai. Numbers 10 is a profound reflection of the Israelites' journey of faith and enduring testament to their reliance on divine guidance. It serves as a reminder to trust in God's command in times of transition and uncertainty, demonstrating that even when the journey is difficult, obedience to divine instruction leads to a purposeful destination. In present times, the silver trumpets can metaphorically symbolize the different ways God communicates with us, urging us to heed His call, gather in unity, celebrate in joy, and bravely face challenges. So that's an interesting thought and statement, isn't it, about Numbers chapter 10. And as we look at this, and what we've been noticing is the concept, if you will, or the idea behind God's purpose and plan generally hasn't changed, has it? When you look at that statement up there about being a reminder to trust in God's commands in times of transition and uncertainty. Do we see times of transition and uncertainties in our lives, throughout our lives here on this earth? Do we see transitions and uncertainty, not maybe in our lives, but in the world around about us? Which in a turn does impact us, doesn't it? We see that, don't we? And we can feel those things. And they could too. And so this learns to teach us that in these transitions and uncertainties that when the journey is difficult, can you say sometimes the journey is difficult? Would that be a fair statement? Yeah. Yep. Sure can be, can it? Would it be fair to say that that we need to stick to obedience to divine instruction, leads to a purposeful destination if we endure? Are we going to obtain a personal, are we going to obtain a purposeful destination if we endure all this? This is physical now in the times of Israel, okay? To endure this. Today, the same can be said about our spiritual walk, can't it? Do we endure trials and temptations and uncertainties and things like that? Mm-hmm. What do we have to do, though? In both the physical and spiritual, look for divine guidance, don't we? Anyway, so, so God, at this time, He did. The silver trumpets can metaphorically summarize in different ways God communicated. It says with us, but actually with them. Today, what does Hebrews chapter 1 tell us how God speaks to us today? And He did. Hebrews chapter 1 says that in different times and different ages and different periods, God spoke to the different fathers, didn't He? And He did. But it says today He has spoken to us by what? His dear Son. So what do we find the dear Son speaking to us today? What metaphorically, that's right, Jeff, the Bible is. Metaphorically, what would the silver trumpet be today? The Word, wouldn't it? The Bible. So we can see the shadow of these things to be. The silver trumpets, verses 1 through 10. Jeff, would you read that for us, please?
And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Make 2 silver trumpets of hammered wood. You shall make them, and you shall use them for summoning the congregation and breaking the camp. When both are blown, all the congregation shall gather themselves to you at the entrance of the tent of meeting. If you blow one trumpet, then the chiefs, the heads of the tribes of Israel, shall gather themselves to you. And when you blow an alarm, the camps that are on the east side set out. And when you blow an alarm the second time, the camps along the south side shall set out. And an alarm is to be blown which they are to set out. But when the assembly is to be gathered together, you shall blow a long blast, and you shall not sound an alarm. And the sons of Aaron, the priest, shall blow the trumpets, and the trumpets shall be to you for a perpetual statute throughout the generations. And when you go to war in the land against the adversary who oppresses you, you shall sound the alarm with the trumpets, that you may be remembered before the Lord God, that you shall be saved from your enemies. And on the day of your gladness also you shall build, and at your appointed feast, and the blessings of your months, and you shall blow the trumpets over your burnt offerings and over your sacrifices for peace offerings. They shall be a reminder of you before the Lord. I am the Lord your God.
Okay, so here we have God telling them about the silver trumpets. Now, if you look at this, what were these silver trumpets used for? Communication purposes, wasn't it? He gave them instructions on when to blow the trumpets and what the sound of the trumpet would mean, whether you blowed it once, whether you blowed it twice. A way of communication is all it was with these trumpets. They had a certain signal or sound that they would produce when time of war, time of emergency, you know. A lot of times we find that when the walled cities, they had people that were lookouts, wasn't it? Well, a lot of times, how would they sound the warning? A trumpet, wouldn't it? It had different tones and different sounds for different situations arising. And maybe we've kind of experienced some of that in our day and time. You know, used to around towns and cities, there were clocks that chimed, didn't they? Well, what did that tell us? That was a way of communicating the time, wasn't it? Jeff, when it struck once, that means it was 1 o'clock, right? It struck 3 times, that means dong, 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 you know, that means 3 o'clock, right? So we're not, that's not unusual. Used to be on farms, large farming operations, they had these big bells outside. And the women would prepare the food, maybe for lunch or for supper for the men. What would they do? Well, they'd ring these big bells, wouldn't they? It's a sign, way of communication. We know the Bible talks about the trumpet of God being sound at the last day, doesn't it? So, you know, what does that mean? Well, when we hear that trumpet blow, guess what? That's it. That's telling us, I'm coming. Well, actually, I'm here. By the time we hear the trumpet, he gets here, it's all going to be done, said and done, isn't it? Okay, so the use of trumpets, it's not foreign, okay, to man. The way to communicate, you know, we see a lot of times in this country. I've never seen it done. I don't know how much of it's folklore and how much it ever happened, but the Indians had a way to communicate, didn't they? Supposedly with smoke signals, right? A form of communication. So you got to have a way to communicate things at large. And this is what this form of communication. The Lord commands Moses to make 2 silver trumpets to be used for calling the community together and for giving the signal to break camp. When both trumpets are sounded, the entire community assemble, and when only one is blown, only the leaders are summoned. So the trumpets also serve as an alarm for going into battle, because festivities and sacrifices. I know you've probably seen pictures of it. I've seen the bells in Amish country, but I've never seen them ring them, okay? But I understand that they use the bells to communicate with each other like that. They use these big, dinner bells, we would call them, down here to communicate. If there's an emergency, they go to sound the bell, and the community kind of conveys in the area the bell rings in, okay? So, not a foreign concept. Man's got to have a way to communicate at large. So there was forms of communication, Isaac, before cell phone. Whoa, I know, okay. So, anyway, this is their way of communication. Now, Greg, we could talk about the old landlines, with the 7 dial tones that we had. You had to listen to the ringer right and to know when you to answer and all like that, but we won't get into all that. That was a 50s and 60s form of communication, you see. But anyway, that's another story. We're now going to have them coming into the wilderness of Paran here shortly. The Lord's going to tell them, and we'll read this in just a minute, beginning in verse 11. And I thought I would show this map to kind of set the tone and the thought pattern as we read this about what's going on and where they're at. And I'm going to have to step away from this, and we're going to have to get our monitor set up so you can see it live on television too when I walk away. Currently, this is where they're at, Mount Sinai. This is the wilderness here of Paran. They're going to be traveling this way. Up in here, and I'll show another map, is going to be Kadesh Barnea. And actually the way they're going to be traveling is around this area here called Mount Seir, S-E-I-R. To the east of Mount Syria is an area location that we hear a lot about in the news and stuff like that called the Gulf of Aqaba, okay? So this area up here from the Dead Sea down through here is generally considered the mountainous range of Syria, okay? Not the country Syria, but the name of this mountainous range. Verses 11 and 12. Morton, you have that?
Now it came to pass on the 20th day of the second month of the second year that the cloud was taken up from above the tabernacle of the testimony, and the children of Israel set out from the wilderness of Sinai on their journeys. Then the cloud settled down in the wilderness of Paran.
Okay, so in the wilderness of Paran is where they're headed. If you look at this, this is a map that's broke out maybe just a little bit better. It seems like the path traveled, based upon what we know, is through this Mount Syria area up through here by what would be called the Gulf of Aqaba. This light here that we see was a well-known trade area for that part of Arabia. And so they traveled up through here and over to Kadesh Barnea, from what we can tell, somewhere in this route like this. So this is what we're going to be talking about in their travels as they head to Kadesh Barnea, and along the way it's going to have some interesting events that's going to come forward with them. From what we know from Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse 2, it's somewhere around 11 days journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnea. Okay, so somewhere around 11 days journey. We'll get a little bit more into that. Not sure which slide it's on, about how far is a day's journey, okay? This is generally a photo of a desert area from that part of the world. You can see that a lot of the travel through there, the distance traveled, it varied, didn't it? Generally, a day's travel is considered about 25 miles, based on an average of 3 miles per hour, okay? In our country, sometimes you wonder, even in other countries, you sometimes wonder why these little towns are every 20 miles or 25 miles or so. Well, guess what? If you're walking or traveling by horse, guess how far you're going to get? About 20, 25 miles, okay? That's why they're set up like that, okay? So, but anyway, this is what it looks like. And so verses 11 through 28 tells us about the journey from Mount Sinai to the wilderness of Paran. Isaac, do you have verses 13 through 17? Would you read that for us?
So they started out for the first time according to the command of the Lord by the hand of Moses. The standard of the camp of the children of Judah set out first according to their armies. Over their army was Nashon, the son of Amminadab. Over the army of the tribe of the children of Issachar was Nathaniel, the son of Zor. And over the army of the tribe of the children of Zebulun was Elad, the son of Helon. Then the tabernacle was taken down, and the sons of Gershon and the sons of Moriah set out carrying the tabernacle.
I don't think we're going the general principle about these tribes is laid down about their standard and they're moving, and it goes on down to verse 25, the standard of the camp of the children of Dan, which was rearward of the camp throughout their host, over the host of the tribe of Israel. So it's all the same thing. So verse 28, thus were the journeys of the children of Israel according to their armies when they set forward. So as we said in our last lesson, we saw the organization of this taking place, okay? And we read down through that each of these camps had their prince, our prime minister, that was assigned to them. Their job was to make sure the organization and the location of these tribes was in order like God wanted them, okay? And so we talked about that probably a pretty good extent before. So the 20th day of the second month of the second year, the Israelites set out from the desert of Sinai and journeyed to the wilderness of Paran according to the commands of the Lord. The Ark of the Covenant led the way, and the tribes of Israel marched in an orderly manner as directed by God, each with his own leader. So, what does that tell us today about things? Who is in charge of Israel? Who leads the way? Spiritual Israel today. Well, God does, doesn't he? Through his son Jesus. What led the way to them? The Ark of the Covenant. Who appeared at the Ark of the Covenant when they made camp? God. In a cloud by day, fire by night, right? Okay? Is there organization and structure in the church today? Does God have it organized with the duties and responsibilities of the individual in the church? Yeah. So here again, the shadow and thought of what we're seeing is still intact today. Here again, this was a physical camp. Was it organized and structured? Yeah. By whose command? God's command. What if one of the leaders of the tribes had said, I don't know why we got to line up that way. It would be easy if we line up over here and we could walk a little better pathway and not maybe be so much in the crowd, okay? Now what have we done, Jim? We've done something God hadn't commanded because it's based on my thoughts and my ideas and my opinions. Well, when we get into that, what happens? We wound up in the ditch, don't we? So we have to be careful with those things in the church today. Israel greatly welcomed strangers and foreigners amongst them. God gave them specific instructions about strangers and foreigners being among them. They were treated just like anybody else, okay? They were not treated as less, okay? Even though we're fixing to get into something, maybe not, I think it's in chapter 11, about the mixed multitude and what that was, okay? And it may not be what we think it is, okay? I know what Cecil B. DeMille did with it in the Ten Commandments, okay, that movie. But what the Bible does with it may be, meaning may be something else kind of entirely. Maybe some of the points are the same. But anyway, that's another story. So, anyway. Any of you brethren have any comments on any of this so far? And now we're going to get in the journey from Sinai to Paran, verses 29 through 32. Eli, have you got that? All right.
Now Moses said to Hobab, the son of Reuel, the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law, we are setting out for the place of which the Lord said, I will give it to you. Come with us, and we will treat you well, for the Lord has promised good things to Israel. And he said to him, I will not go, but I will depart to my own land and to my relatives. So Moses said, please do not leave, as much as you know how we are to camp in the wilderness, and you can be our eyes. And it shall be, if you go with us, indeed it shall be, that whatever good the Lord will do to us, the same we will do to you.
Okay, so here we have an individual here that Moses is asking to come along. And his name is described as Moses said unto Hobab, the son of Raguel. Raguel is another way for Jethro, the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law. So this is dealing with Jethro, okay? In one place, I don't know exactly where it's at, it's going to refer to this guy as Moses' brother-in-law. Don't know why they done that. I don't have an explanation for it. When you go research it, don't know why, but when you go back and look at this is referring to Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, in this manner. And as we studied Jethro, when Moses' wife was brought to him after they had left Egypt, we did notice that the land of the Midianites was that land across from the Gulf of Aqaba over in that area, okay? So when Moses' wife was brought unto him, Jethro's daughter, that's the way they traveled over into that. And I think we talked about that in one of the other lessons. We showed a map on that about where the land of the Midianites was. So this is dealing with Jethro, Jethro's family. Moses didn't want them to depart, is what it was. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is Jethro being from that side of the world, or that side of the country, guess what he knew? He knew the landmass, didn't he? He wanted him to be a guide. Help us go through this. We need your help. We need your guidance. You know some of the routes. This is a mountainous desert terrain, and you know the ins and outs of it. You know the trade routes, okay? You know where we should go. But what did he say? He said, no, I'm going to return to my land. And this may be the providence of God at work here, because who had God already told them that he wanted to be the leader? Him. I'll guide you. I'll take care of you. So it's real easy to start putting one trust in. Now, the journey wasn't going to be easy, was it? The ideals that Moses had as a human, and from human wisdom, the logic's not flawed, because it's human wisdom. But did God want human wisdom as guidance, or did he want them to trust in him to guide them? The cloud by day, the fire by night. So, maybe you see a little bit of the providence of God at work here too, in the life of Jethro, refusing to go. So anyway, there it went. Law of my club. Hobab asked to go, but refuses. And now we're going to get into verses 33 through 36. The structure and gathering of the people. Greg, do you have that?
Thus they set out from the mount of the Lord 3 days' journey, with the ark of the covenant of the Lord journeying in front of them for 3 days to seek out a resting place for them. The cloud of the Lord was over them by day when they set out from the camp. Then it came about when the ark set out that Moses said, Rise up, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee before you. Then when he came to rest, he said, Return, O Lord, to the myriad thousand of Israel.
All right. Okay, so here we have. And so they departed from the mount. And so now they're going to travel 3 days' journey, which is going to be roughly, it could be up to 75 miles. But you got to remember the weather and terrain has a big bearing on this, okay? So did they actually travel up to 75 miles? I don't know, Eli, I wasn't there. I'm old, but I ain't quite that old, right? But anyway, they did travel this journey, okay, just like the Lord had told them. And who's being the leader here? And the cloud of the Lord was upon them by day when they went out from the camp. So who did God want them to be their guide? Him, okay? So, and the Israelites march. They seek the Lord's protection and guidance. The chapter ends with a poignant and verse reflecting the Israelites trust in the Lord, trust in the Lord's direction throughout their journey. So, who gives us direction today on our journey as Christians toward heaven? Well, I get mine from the Reverend. Have you ever heard that phraseology? That's a worldly phraseology, isn't it? But we don't get our instructions from man, do we? Or the Reverend, or the Archbishop, or whoever he may be. Where do we get our instructions from? The Lord, who guides us on our journey through the wilderness, on our travel through Paran. The Lord, doesn't it? So here again, the type and shadow still exists, doesn't it? So this is what puzzled Jesus, and it kind of us today because we have the written word. You would have think the Jewish leaders in Jesus' day would have readily recognized him, wouldn't they? Supposedly, they knew the Pentateuch, didn't they? The old law, supposedly. But boy, did they miss it, right? That's the wisdom of men. in this. Any of your brethren have any comment on that before we move on?
Bobby,
Yes.
I think sometimes we don't realize the logistical manner of what was going on here. You know, we're only 70 miles from Birmingham.
Right.
I think about take the population of Birmingham, put them all on foot,
Woo.
and get them down this way.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're gonna be strung out for
Miles.
miles. You
Okay.
know,
Oh,
Probably 30, 40 miles.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You don't imagine the magnitude of this. You know, that's why, and really, Jeff, that's why you gotta have an organization have. You gotta have structure. Why do we have government? Structure, order, organization. If God has said, all right, y'all break camp, let's go. Now you got 600,000 plus able-bodied footmen, which would equate out to well over 3 million people, right? Going in every direction. Now, how are you going to get to Kadesh Barnea and everybody going in the same direction with no organization, no instruction, no whatever? It ain't possible, okay? Forget it, okay? Even when we travel today, what do we have? Organization and structure in our world, don't we? When we travel. You know, today we have GPSs, in my day we had road maps, and prior to that you had hickory trees and service stations, Greg. You'd always find some older guy that hung out of the service station or was sitting in the shade of a hickory tree, and you could ask him where to go, and he'd tell you, well, you need to go a few miles down here, and you'll see this wall of that tree with the limb hanging out over the road. Go past that and you take a left. Go down about a quarter mile, and you see old man Brown's pond down there, and just before you get to it, you take a right. Remember them instructions? Now, y'all don't, the young people don't remember them instructions, I do. I remember me and Daddy going over to Mississippi one time, and got turned around, and he said, I got to find the old service station guy with the old man sitting around. So we looked around, drove around a little bit. We found a service station, had this old guy sitting out, you know, propped up on an apple box. Told Daddy where to go. You know? So we got to have that today, don't we? We got to have this structure, this organization. We got to know where we're going and how to get there. Okay? Even today, a lot of times with GPS, we still get confused on how we get there, don't we? Yeah. And that can be another story in itself. So. Of course, we're still in the book of Numbers. We'll go ahead and get started in chapter 11. I don't know how far we're going to get into this, but we will go ahead and get started into it. Here again, we're dealing with the journey of Israel in this. Numbers 11 serves as a powerful reminder of the peril of discontentment and the importance of appreciating the provisions and opportunities that God has given us. Wow. What a statement, right? Numbers 11 serves as a powerful reminder. What does the New Testament tell us about the Old? The Old was given unto us, why? As a schoolmaster to lead us to Christ. Why else it was given? It was given to us so that we wouldn't lust after things they lusted after. A lot of lessons to be learned in this, isn't it? Okay? A lot of lessons. Even today, it's a powerful reminder of the peril of discontentment and the importance of appreciating provisions and opportunities that God has given us. Be thankful for what you have. Be thankful for what you're blessed with today. Discontentment. Now, we're not saying a person should not have goals and some ambitions and aspirations. You got to put this in context in its proper order, okay? But always discontent. Not satisfied with where you're at, what you got. Don't be appreciated. I don't know if you ever thought about this. Maybe the reason we haven't progressed in maybe our goals or our ambitions is that problem right there. We don't appreciate what we got. We don't appreciate and utilize what God has blessed us with in the little maybe. How are we going to take care of a lot? You know, isn't that some good teaching from the New Testament? You know? It's something to stop and think about. Despite the struggles, the Israelites often failed to recognize God's constant presence and care, leading to the dire consequences. This chapter urges us to cultivate gratitude, trust in divine wisdom, and shoulder our responsibilities with grace and humility. I love that last statement, Morgan. This chapter urges us to cultivate appreciation, being happy with what we're at, what we've got, trusting in God, and to shoulder whose responsibility? Our. Who is the our there? Well, in this particular case, it was the children of Israel, wasn't it? Today, who is that statement be to? Be to us, wouldn't it? Learn to shoulder our responsibilities with grace and humility. And that may be part of the problem, too, about this pearl of discontentment, right? We don't shoulder our responsibilities with grace and humility. A lot of lessons to be learned here, isn't there? And that's enough on that. We'll move on. I got to ring that bus. I know sometimes when you look at this, you get the impression sometimes that, kind of teaching out the New Testament, aren't you? Yeah, you get that, don't you? Why? Because it's really a carryover, isn't it? The heart and mind is the same, isn't it? The principles are already laid. The principles are laid down here, aren't they? Okay. So, let's see. So what's the conversation going to look like in this? Men are low, they're hated. Here we go. Okay? The 70 elders, here we go. And quail given. This is what we're going to be talking about here in chapter 11. Don't know exactly how far we're going to get, but those are some of the subjects that we're going to be looking at here. Fire from the Lord. What would that be? Here these people are like, Well, what's going on here? What were the children of Israel starting to do? Complain and groan and fuss and moan about what? Having to eat that old manna God's given us. We're so tired of this old manna. We wish we'd back in Egypt. At least we had some melons and leeks and some fish to eat. Kind of the attitude today of people, isn't it? They can't see the blessing they have received because they're looking at something else from human desires. So verses 1 through 3, I don't know exactly where we're at, Jeff. I guess I'm on with you.
And the people complained in hearing of the Lord about their misfortunes, and when the Lord heard it, his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burned among them, and consumed some outlying parts of the camp. And the people cried out to Moses, and Moses prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down. And the name of the place was called Tiberah, because the fire of the Lord burned among them.
Okay, so what do we have here? The King James Version says, and when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. His anger was kindled, and so he sent fire among them to consume them. That was in the uttermost parts of the camp. Wow. But here they are, And God's done told them, But no, we don't want this. We don't want what you provided for us. So, God, fire kindled against them. And it's our choice, isn't it? It's our choice whether we take what God's provided for us today spiritually, isn't it? He's provided the way out, hasn't he? It's kind of interesting since the flood, what mostly have we seen being used in the form of punishment? Fire. Fire. Fire rained down on Sodom and Gomorrah, didn't it? Fire rained down on Nadab and Abihu. Fire now rained down upon what? The camp, right? So what are we seeing here? Destruction by what? Fire. How's the world going to be destroyed in the end? Fire. So now we're seeing another pattern starting to develop from the Old Testament toward where we're headed toward judgment, okay? So are we starting to see that coming to the plain? This chapter begins with the Israelites complaining about their hardships, angered by ingratitude. God sends a fire that destroys the outskirts of the camp. Moses, acting as the intercessor, prays and the fire subsides. Today, if God had his way, would he send fire down upon us? Yeah. But what do we have between him and us? An intercessor, don't we? What's the intercessor's name? Jesus. We have the same thing, don't we? So right now, we're saved from the fires of the Lord because of who? Jesus. These people were saved from the fires because of Moses, wasn't it? Because what was God going to do with that fire? He's going to destroy him, wasn't he? You know, he'd already said that one time, hadn't he? He was ready to destroy this people. And if it hadn't been for Moses, what would have happened? He was fed up with that grumbling and growling and complaining. He's doing everything he can to provide for them, to shelter them and take care of them, and they're doing everything they can to say, no. Okay. So, I'm going to have to stop right there, and we'll pick up next week. We'll probably come back to this, and then we'll get into where the mixed multitude, it looks like, started in verse 4, grumbling about the manna, and then the children of Israel, they chime in wanting meat. So, anyway, we'll pick up there. We've got to get ready for the worship service. So, thank you.
Sorry, change my age to 2005. And verify your age, share your ID.
Well, and God isn't here, it's gonna be crazy.
Vicky, that up ahead there may be a tip off of who's going to be speaking tonight.
They won't have enough for.
Good job.
Because Eli, I'm gonna sit on, Eli don't want me to breathe here. So they had to sit on the opposite, bridge.
Or Emma don't want you to breathe on her.
I called the church building.
What?
Eli used to do it.
I know, they still, I know.
When did we ever fight?